This is the story of Nelson Mandela, one of Africa's greatest freedom fighters. Diverse story, one continent. We are Africans and this is our story. On a cool July morning in 1918, in the small village of Mbizo, South Africa, a boy was born to a chief of the Thembu people. His mother named him Ralilola, meaning troublemaker in his native Xhosa language. No one knew that this boy would one day shake the foundations of an unjust system. When he was 7, his teacher gave him the English name Nelson, as was customary under British rule. Young Nelson was curious and strong-willed, fascinated by the stories of African warriors who had resisted colonial rule. But he was also a quiet, observant child who absorbed the wisdom of his elders. Mandela's father died when he was just 9, and he was sent to live with the acting Thembu king, Janjantaba Dalindibo, who took him in as a son. In the royal household, he received a better education than most African children. He learned about justice, leadership, and diplomacy, but he also saw the growing racial divide in South Africa. At 16, he took part in the traditional Xhosa initiation ceremony, marking his transition into manhood. There, he listened to elders speak of how the white minority controlled the land and wealth, while black South Africans lived as second-class citizens. A fire ignited within him, a fire that would never be extinguished. Mandela pursued higher education, first at the prestigious Fort Hare University. But when he joined a student protest, he was expelled. Fearing an arranged marriage, he fled to Johannesburg, the city of gold, where he worked as a mine guard before studying law. It was in Johannesburg that Mandela saw firsthand the brutal reality of apartheid, the system of racial segregation enforced by the white-led government. Black South Africans had no rights, no land, and no voice. He joined the African National Congress, ANC, a political group fighting for racial equality. By the late 1940s, Mandela and his comrades in the ANC Youth League were demanding bold action against apartheid. He trained as a lawyer, defending black South Africans in court. But laws were designed to oppress, not protect. When the government introduced laws forcing black South Africans to carry passbooks, limiting their movement, Mandela and the ANC launched protests. In 1952, he led the Defiance Campaign, urging people to break unjust laws. His charisma, intelligence, and courage made him a national figure, but also a target for the authorities. On March 21, 1960, police opened fire on peaceful protesters in Sharpeville, killing 69 unarmed people. This massacre shocked the world. The government declared a state of emergency, banning the ANC. Mandela had always believed in peaceful protest, inspired by leaders like Mahatma Gandhi. But now, he saw no other choice. In 1961, he co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, Spear of the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC. He secretly trained in guerrilla warfare, planning sabotage against government buildings, never targeting civilians. Mandela went into hiding, but in 1962, he was arrested and sentenced to 5 years for leaving the country illegally. While in prison, police raided an ANC hideout in Rivonia, finding documents linking Mandela to sabotage plans. He was put on trial again, this time facing the death penalty. At the Rivonia trial in 1964, Mandela delivered his famous speech. "I have walked a long road to freedom. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Instead of execution, he was sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to Robben Island, a harsh prison where he spent 18 years in a small cell, breaking rocks under the sun. Though locked away, Mandela's spirit could not be broken. He secretly wrote letters and smuggled messages to keep the ANC movement alive. Prison guards feared him, yet some respected him, seeing his dignity even in chains. Outside, the world was changing. By the 1980s, international pressure on South Africa had intensified. Countries imposed economic sanctions, artists refused to perform, and millions chanted "Free Nelson Mandela." The government, under President P.W. Botha, refused to release him unless he renounced violence, but Mandela stood firm. Only a free man can negotiate. In 1989, Botha was replaced by F.W. de Klerk, who saw that apartheid could not last. In February 1990, after 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela walked free. The world watched as he raised his fist in triumph. He urged peace and unity, preventing a civil war. Negotiations between the ANC and the government led to the first democratic elections in 1994. On April 27, 1994, millions of black South Africans voted for the first time. Their choice was clear: Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first black president. As president, Mandela worked to heal the nation. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, allowing victims and perpetrators of apartheid crimes to tell their stories, seeking justice without revenge. In 1995, he united the country through rugby. When South Africa won the Rugby World Cup, he wore the Springboks jersey, once a symbol of white dominance, showing that the nation could be won. After one term, Mandela stepped down, proving he was a true Democrat. He spent his later years fighting for human rights, AIDS awareness, and global peace. On December 5, 2013, at the age of 95, Nelson Mandela passed away. The world mourned, but his legacy lived on. He had walked the long road to freedom, not just for himself, but for his people. And because of him, South Africa was free.